Well, maybe a non-issue, but it's certainly a talking point and has been all week long. From your perspective, what did you think of, well, not his particular comments, because he's been harping on this playmaker / backup point guard thing for well over a month now. What do you make of LeBron going public with his pleas to management to bring in somebody?
Seems like there's a lot of going public in the NBA these days. Yeah, I'm a little surprised. I'm a little surprised at that. And look, I understand. I mean, look, you get rid of, Dellavedova signs with Milwaukee. You lose Mozgov. J.R. Smith, who's an integral part of their success the last couple of years and even last year's playoff run. He's hurt. He's not there. There's a trust that was developed with those two guys. And so you haven't really replaced them. And I think in large part now LeBron is having to do more, to do more as a playmaker. He's played 7 long seasons. That second unit now, you need either Kyrie or LeBron out on the court, and you can't let a second backup point guard run the show. So I understand his frustration. But nobody really cares. I mean, you're LeBron James, you're the defending champion. No one thinks that, you're going to complain about a role player, and that's the reason why you're not playing well. But I will say this. They've lost 3 in a row. They lost, 6 out of their last 8 games. Their defensive efficiency is down. They're allowing more fast break points. They're not rebounding as well. They're turning the ball. So a lot of these, it's not just because of a backup point guard.
No.
You wonder, are they a little tired mentally? Are they frustrated? Is this sort of been something that's been going on in LeBron's frustrations has trickled down into the locker room? A lot of question marks, but it is surprising to see him come out publicly like that and kind of blast the organization.
Well, I also wonder, because LeBron's a smart guy and he's been around the NBA for a very long time now, if this was purposeful in terms of distracting people from maybe some of their real issues and getting the attention of his teammates, as if to say, we need to play better.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any question. LeBron James has not said anything with a microphone in his face that wasn't calculated since he was 16, 17 years old. He understands what his words mean to ownership, the coaching staff, the front office, the rest of his locker room. I look at the calendar when LeBron talks like this, and this is always kind of his come down after the holidays. LeBron has issues. I don't know if it's, finding his own personal joy after Christmas or what, but he always seems to agitate this time of year. Sometimes it's poking his teammates, about they need to play better. Sometimes it's poking the makeup of the roster. But what resonates with me about the way he went about it is that he was very specific in what he didn't say and who he didn't name. People assumed he was talking about David Griffin. He made it clear in the aftermath, I was not speaking about Griff. So that leads me to believe this is an issue between LeBron maybe and Dan Gilbert about the long-term 30,000 feet view of what they're doing in Cleveland and how they're going to proceed. And to me, this is not the place to have this conversation if you're LeBron. This was something better left for a private meeting between he and the owner, he and the front office, so it didn't become a distraction for a team that's in the midst of struggles. Losing 6 of 8, struggling against teams that they should beat theoretically. I don't know that this is the best time for them to have these sorts of distractions.
Well, and it's an interesting target for those comments as well, considering the Cavaliers have the highest payroll in all of the NBA. And in fact, I believe it's the highest payroll in NBA history in terms of the luxury tax and what they're paying right now. I mean, Dan Gilbert has written all the checks, in some cases, for guys who are stable mates of Rich Paul, LeBron's agent, of course, who have kind of held them up for contracts, Tristan Thompson, of course, and J.R. Smith the last couple of seasons.
Without a doubt. I mean, Dan Gilbert has really just gone above and beyond, using all their resources to give the Cleveland Cavaliers enough firepower to be successful. So you can't really criticize him for that. And to your point about LeBron sort of being calculated in terms of what he says and always aware of sort of his voice and the power that it has. I just didn't, whatever the reason was, and if he's going at Dan Gilbert, he kind of threw some of his guys under the bus. And the guy who's sort of considered, and from talking to guys that have played with him, he's the ultimate teammate. I mean, he is just a fantastic teammate. He's very inclusive, dinners, just making everyone feel welcome and a part of the entire team's success, that he would kind of say, look, the guys we have aren't good enough. I mean, if I were in the locker room, I'd be offended.
Right.
I'd be upset about that. I'd have a difficult time. And so, you might be right. Maybe, look, what do you buy a guy like LeBron James for Christmas? And maybe he's disappointed this time of year coming out of the holidays. But, I am surprised for someone who's been that savvy for him to kind of use this forum to go after Gilbert.
Well, he's right in the middle of their issues as well. He's played 44 minutes or more in the last 3 games and has had 5 or more turnovers in 9 of their last 11 games, and maybe that's where some of that playmaking stuff is coming in.
There's no question this is a personnel issue. I just don't think LeBron is pointing his wand at the right place.
Right.
This is about the choices they've made prior to now.
Yes.
And some of these guys, if you drafted Kay Felder and added Liggins and some of these guys to this roster and expected them to be able to perform at the level LeBron James wants them to perform,
right,
I think that was a miscalculation on the organization's part. So that's fair game. But the problem for LeBron is, like you said, Grant, they've spent every dime possible and then some to put together a championship team. They're coming off a championship. For LeBron to publicly bellyache about it now screams that, this is something subliminal he's talking about. This is, this is some more of that, like I said, some of that LeBron annual agitation parade, and this is the form it's taking.
It is hard to credibly suggest that your organization isn't providing the resources necessary for a championship when you are the defending champions.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's just the way it is. The Knicks are also at it tonight. As you probably heard, they are having a week, and by that I mean a bunch of weeks, and I don't mean good weeks. New York's lost 17 of their last 23 as they host the Hornets tonight. Trade talks as well involving Carmelo Anthony, and Coach Jeff Hornacek addressed those earlier tonight.
Carmelo's been around this game a long time, and has probably dealt with that before. We try to tell our younger players that around this time of year with trade rumors, if your team's not at the top, even that team, you look at Cleveland's at the one of the top teams, and they're talking about it. So as a player, you can only focus on the game. Coaches, we can only focus on coaching, and if things like that happen, then you move on, and guy who gets traded figures it out. But we're still just assuming that everybody's here until something like that happens. So that's the life during the trade time.
And what else can you do but continue to answer questions from the New York media about Carmelo Anthony, because reports continue to indicate that the Knicks are trying to find a deal to move him and a destination for which he'd waive his no-trade clause. How tough is it to try to turn things around in the middle of all that?
It's very tough. I mean, it's interesting. A couple things. One, they got off to a great start, 14-11. Then I think around, mid-December, Phil Jackson came out with some choice words about Carmelo. And then it's almost like it's been sort of downhill from that moment
Which felt
forward.
like they came out of nowhere.
They came out of nowhere because I thought they were, at least a step improvement from last year. And maybe not, reaching the expectations that Phil Jackson and ownership had for the Knicks. But you know what? They were playing pretty good basketball the first 4 to 6 weeks. And then from that moment on, it's been downhill. And then Phil not really addressing things, not talking to the media. Charlie Rosen, who's a writer in New York and is closely associated with Phil Jackson, came out with an article where he really bashed Carmelo. So now there's just all this uncertainty. And we know Phil liked to create some of that as a coach.
Yes.
Although it's a little bit different when you're in management. So I'm not sure, I did the game on Monday, and the spirit in that locker room was just before the game. It was, I wasn't sure they were going to win another game this year. Now, they came out and beat Indiana on a road game and played very well. But I would not be surprised if he's gone by the deadline. And I just think, I think it's at a point now where they have to, go separate ways. How that happens, where he goes, what they get back in return, I don't know. But this will be the news up until the trade deadline daily within the Knicks organization. And it's got to be a distraction. I know Hornacek said it's not, but it is.
We did a prediction segment in January of last year about things that we thought would happen in 2016. One of mine was that Carmelo Anthony would finish the year with another team, simply because I felt like his timeline and the Knicks timeline just don't match up in terms of development. Could be that I'm off by 6 or 7 weeks, but from where he stands, it's apparent that the Knicks would like to move him. They're not going anywhere this season. He's 32 years of age. It makes perfect sense for him if there's a contender out there, the Clippers perhaps, that's been talked about, that wants to give that a go.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the options, and these are really options that Carmelo has, because with the no-trade clause that has to be waived,
right,
trade kicker, all these other components involved, this isn't a situation that the Knicks control. They're really at Carmelo's beck and call in terms of how this gets done. He can even decide which players are involved. Like, he can veto the idea of this trade if he doesn't like the deal. That puts you in a very precarious position if you're Jeff Hornacek. I said this the night Derrick Rose didn't show up for the game, without anybody knowing where he was. Jeff Hornacek has been the guy who's been put repeatedly in a really tough situation, trying to coach this team, trying to manage all of the other moving parts that are going on around this team. Now you have the Carmelo drama that will rage on, as Grant said, until the February 23rd trade deadline. I almost feel like you have to find a solution to this if you want to take the step that the Knicks are trying to take, which is they want to build around Kristaps Porzingis. And I think everybody understands that. So now it becomes a mission of finding the right pieces to put around him to further this cause and to get Carmelo out of town with the least amount of extra drama, on top of what we already have.
Easier said than done, it would seem.